Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the public session of the Committee of the Whole meeting of the Halton District School Board on June 12, 2024. Please be advised that the meeting is being recorded and is being live streamed on the hdsb.ca and on the HDSB YouTube channel. We have trustees both in person and online. Joining us in person tonight are Trustee Bryden, Chair Collard, Trustee Cheney, and online, we have Trustee Daniele and Trustee Amos and Trustee Baxter. We have regrets from Trustees Shuttleworth and Rocha and Trustee Gray. And a couple others might be joining us a little bit later on. Director Ennis, can you please let us know which of the staff are in attendance this evening?
Thank you so much, Vice Chair Oliver. We do have the relevant staff tonight to speak to the items on the agenda. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We'll begin with land acknowledgement. Trustee Bryden will be honoring the land tonight.
Thank you. We begin by acknowledging the land and our responsibility to care for and respect all that provides us with life. This land upon which HDSB is situated is on the ancestral treaty and title lands of the Anishinaabeg Ojibwe Michizagig Nation, now known as the Mississaugas of the Credit. Michizagig territory in the past and present continues to host both Indigenous and non-Indigenous peoples. The HDSB is committed to continuous knowledge building with respect to actions that address and resolve the ongoing impacts of colonialism. We do this by learning and understanding the true history, treaty obligations, duties, and responsibilities and Indigenous rights, while actively maintaining mutually beneficial relationships and collectively respecting and caring for the land.
Thank you very much. We'll move on to approval of the agenda. Trustee Amos, would you like to move a motion to approve the agenda?
Yes, please.
Are there any objections to approving the agenda? I'm not seeing or hearing any. The agenda is approved by unanimous consent. In relation to our agenda this evening, are there any declarations of possible conflict of interest? Seeing none, we'll move on to item 2.0. And with us tonight, we have our student trustees, Shrina and Sultan, who will provide us with a presentation they've been working on artificial intelligence. I know this has taken up a lot of your time. It's an interest and a passion project for you this year. And so we welcome learning from you and hearing your insights.
Thank you, Vice Chair Oliver. So we're going to commence our presentation on AI in the Halton District School Board.
So yeah, as Vice Chair Oliver mentioned, this is a project that we've dedicated a lot of our time to over our term as student trustees this past school year. We've done a lot of work with consultations and things like that, so we just wanted to kind of summarize that to the Board of Trustees and share our insights from our findings, and then hopefully as discussions arise in the upcoming years, as I assume they will with AI evolving faster than we can talk right now, hopefully these insights can be something we reference and we go back to as we further the work we're doing. So our conversation tonight will revolve around background into what is AI and what the HDSB has already done. There'll be some reflection into why we embarked on this crazy journey, the work we did this year, some findings from our consultation, and the recommendations we have for the board.
For sure. Starting off with the background and a basic explanation of what artificial intelligence is, for those of you who are not aware. So in essence, AI technology refers to the development and application of computer systems that are capable of performing tasks that typically require human intelligence, such as learning, reasoning, problem solving, perception, and decision making. Generative AI refers to a specific type of artificial intelligence systems. It can create new content across various domains like text, for example, that's what ChatGPT does, for writing, images, DALL-E is another tool available, Audio, speech synthesis, music generation are also applications, video, 3D models, and synthetic data. As an example of what some artificial intelligence systems can create, we have here a poem which was written about the HDSB trustees. And it mentions some of the previous trustees because I believe that the data that they used to train the AI is from 2021. So I personally don't really recognize these trustees. So they include Andrea Granberg, Tracy Harrison. Again, personally, I haven't met them, but I'm sure many of you have. So yeah, like AI can generate really awesome things, really creative things, just based on a prompt of a single sentence.
And then moving on to work that AI has been, we've been doing in the HTSB, Halton and I really embarked on a lot of learning for our superintendents. So shout out to the superintendents for hearing us out for our crazy questions throughout our term. So some work that we've been informed on is the work of Superintendent Shaws and his team, which they've really dedicated themselves to doing that cybersecurity policy work for this school year, making sure that our data is secure while utilizing these web applications and ensuring students are safe and making that the utmost priority, which was something really great when we were asked questions to our students and parents about AI that we could reassure them of that amazing, amazing work. With that larger consultation unfolds with Superintendent Frankovich, Flahat, and Shaw hearing from voices and educating as well our principals and staff across the board and hearing their insights about AI and seeing how their day-to-day can be shifted to for the best interest of students in the 21st century. With that, we've also been able to connect with the shift team teachers who've educated us on their busy work, researching the various technologies developed and organized with enrichment activities for students, and exciting projects that Sultan and I got to experience and attend was the collaboration with I Think that the HTSB is very proud to have over the past, I think, dozens of years. And their commitment, I Think challenges prompt this year being surrounding around AI. So Sultan and I, as you can see on that picture, got out to the AI Discovery Day. And that was a great day where students were tasked to just experiment. They were playing around with all these AI tools and they're going back to their schools to think of solutions and educate their peers further. So that's amazing, amazing work that's going on in our HTSB.
Sure. So moving on to the reflection piece for why AI is important in the first place. So AI will undoubtedly reshape the landscape of education for decades to come. As generative AI tools have become more widely available to the public in the recent years, many educational institutions around the world have decided to put a hard ban on AI, citing concerns around academic integrity and data privacy. However, in reality, this is more of a band-aid solution that in long term may do students more harm than good. So the primary reasons for why we believe that's to be the case is, first of all, AI is not going away. It's a part of the real world, and we must teach our students to utilize it effectively. And then on top of that, it's going to have huge implications in the workforce. So if we do wish to prepare our students to, be functioning parts of society, working for employers, utilizing AI will be a necessary skill for them to have. Furthermore, AI can actually be used to enhance the learning of students. So it doesn't have to be used for malicious purposes, like, for example, cheating assignments, but it can also be used for things like brainstorming, creating lesson plans, and personalized tutoring. So personally, in the past, I've used it for helping me answer questions while studying for a chemistry test, right? So it can be used in a very positive manner. And then an analogy that a lot of people like to use regarding AI is of the calculator on Google, where technology was initially looked at from a negative perspective, thinking, students are going to become, less reliant on their own abilities and just use external tools. But in reality, it was used to better their education and focus on priorities that are more relevant to the world today.
Beautifully put. And then moving forward, kind of a student perspective that really allowed Sultan and I to embark on this journey. But with the prevalence of generative AI, especially in this school year, we found this to be a very prevalent topic amongst HTSB students. Currently, Sultan and I are embarking on school visits, and almost every time I ask a group of students, even if they're at that grade 5, 6, 7 age, have you ever heard of AI? Their hands fly up instantly. And I think that goes to show how prevalent that is. And I don't think that would have been the case maybe in the past school year. So I think it really goes to show how quickly AI has made its way through to our school system. And being so new, school boards and even the Ministry of Education has not really provided any guidance as to how it is to be used in our education system. And I think that just has caused a state of confusion and animosity amongst our students, just given that there is this tool that is readily available to them that they're almost itching to use, but they just don't know their boundaries. They don't know their rights and responsibilities. They don't know really where to start with such a tool that's so powerful. Many fear being accused of plagiarism, and it limits their desire to use AI. So whether a lot of our peers, Halton and I have heard, have feared being accused of using AI even when they haven't been, or using it maybe for the ideation process, but still being accused of plagiarism. Furthermore, others have found shared confusion amongst their educators as to how evaluations were to be assessed, the equity aspect and the ethical aspect of whether a student has used AI and whether one hasn't, and how to kind of evaluate them accordingly. So hearing all this from our peers at the beginning of the school year, Halton and I set to the following purpose that you can see on the screen. The general sense is to educate students on their rights and responsibilities using AI, ensuring staff know how to handle instances of misuse in a way that's ethical to students in classrooms. And as well as have both students and staff aware of growing key applications that can be used for bettering the classroom in their future endeavors.
Sure. So moving on to the student trustee consultations that we've been doing over the past year. So like Sharina kind of highlighted it previously, we have been in consultations with a lot of staff within the board, including the shifting teachers, to discover potentially what they've been doing for research, because that's one of their primary objectives within the board. We have held several consultations with Superintendents Flahat, Frankovich, and Shaws about how student voice can be integrated into that discussion, just because they've been the ones really pushing the policy over the past year. We have met with external AI stakeholders, such as Professor Lee at Western University, through Trustees Bryden's help, who currently studies AI in K-12 education sphere, and they provide actually trainings for staff and school boards. They design infographics and other materials for school boards to use to spread awareness of how to use AI ethically. And then we've also been doing quite a lot of consultations with our student senate as the primary student governance body of our board, to rather get an understanding of what students in each school are feeling and how often do they utilize it.
Beautifully put. And then just going back to the last slide for a second, you can see Superintendent Shaw, Frankovich, and Flahat, who came out to one of our Senate meetings and really spoke to the AI strategy, how that is being rolled out within our board. And I remember a lot of our senators speaking to us afterwards and seeing them feeling more at ease with that transparency, with that communication, bridging that gap. They also went into a consultation process that the superintendents have been conducting with the principals. So it was interesting to see it adapted to the students and allowing them to kind of hands-on apply what they know about AI and how they're currently feeling, and allowing our superintendents to take that back and integrate that into their work. So we really appreciate them supporting that. Furthermore, we've also collaborated with the research department of the HTSB. We couldn't be more thankful for their support on integrating AI questions into the HTSB Have Your Say survey, which will be mainly what we talk about in this presentation. And these AI questions were answered both by staff, students, and parents as per the 3 forms of the survey. With that, we've got to do a lot of collaboration with the Ontario Student Trustees Association, otherwise known as OSTA-ACO, and OPSPA as well. So we've had AI investment included within the Ontario Student Trustees Association vision document as a priority for the next 5 years, which is very, very exciting. We also provided a presentation, which you can see Halton and I giving at the top right, of resources to student trustees across the province as to how to introduce AI conversations at their respective boards. I think Halton and I started mentioning that we were interested right from the beginning of our terms into AI, and we had so many student trustees coming up to us just with fear of how to even start the conversation. So that was a little package we brought forward to them of just tips and tricks to starting the conversations, how to reach out to superintendents, how to be mindful of privacy concerns and things like that were very popular across the province, but still introducing the conversation, starting student voices at the forefront, and so much more. With that, we've also got to work with some of the amazing people at OPSPA to express student concerns surrounding AI, and we've encouraged them to form an AI subcommittee in years to follow, which we think will be great. Growth in the right direction for how fastly evolving AI is. And then we've had lots of different word-of-mouth conversations with students, whether it be on our school visits. I think almost immediately one of the first things we're asked about is AI, and we got to do some great conversations through our school visits, other focus groups that we've conducted, so much more. So we're really getting a diverse sense of the student body rather than just through our Senate or something of that nature.
So moving on to our findings. This more relates to the Have Your Say survey, where we had the opportunity to put some questions regarding AI on the survey that goes out to every student, staff, and parents across the Halton region. So to summarize some of the questions that were asked, and we're going to get to the answers later, were the following. So do you know what generative AI is? Yes or no? Have you ever used AI tools when working on schoolwork? Yes or no? If no, why have you not used AI tools for schoolwork? So those are the following reasons. You can read that later on or in your own screen. Then some of the other questions we asked.
Yeah, we also asked them how often they used AI when using on schoolwork and what purposes. We got some really interesting responses from questions of that nature.
Yep. And then, so as AI is new, the Halton District School Board likes to continue to understand, what students currently know about AI. So these were questions regarding that. So the information that AI gives me can be wrong, inaccurate, or biased. So we just wanted to understand, how well they know, how much they know about AI, true, false, or unsure. I can present information that I get from AI tools as my own. Is it okay to share personal information when using AI tools? Are there concerns with privacy and security when using AI tools? And students must be a certain age to use AI tools.
Yeah, we collaborated with Superintendent Shaw a lot on these types of questions. It was very interesting to see the ethics that students feel, and even staff and parents behind how AI should be used in our board. With that, we had some level of agreement questions, so from strongly agree to strongly disagree regarding levels of comfort with AI. So we have comfort levels of asking AI questions to educators, asking AI questions versus educators, how AI would help their learning, seeing AI integrated into the classroom by educators, AI being accessible to them, and AI's prevalence in schools and how comfortable students feel about that.
For sure. So moving on to the results. So for students who were surveyed, we had a total of 21,000 responses with a pretty even distribution among all grades, apart from grade 12, which kind of dropped down. But yeah, generally speaking, we do have representation from both elementary and secondary schools. I'm sorry. There you go.
Okay, and then a lot of really, really interesting findings. So seeing that many students are comfortable with AI, an overwhelming popular percentage, was very comforting to hear and also reflected a lot of what we were hearing in our focus groups. With that, have they ever used AI? The interesting answer of no, we were really curious about, maybe because it was a form that came out through the HDSB giving their comfort levels answering that question. Frequency levels, seeing that a lot of students felt unsure of the frequency levels. I think that unsurety will be reflected throughout more of the results.
So for reasons for why students have not used generative AI tools for schoolwork purposes, the primary reason was that students just didn't know how to use them, which is quite interesting to hear. And then also, the majority of the other students also stated that they don't think that AI will help them with schoolwork, and that really speaks to the lack of proper education that has been available to them, with most current users really only knowing how to use it because through personal experimentation. And then how likely are you to continue using Gen AI tools for work purposes? So this question was unfortunately not structured in the best way possible because it was only asked to students who have previously indicated that they use AI in the past. But yeah, so vast majority stated that they will, with likely and very likely, standing out as the major responses.
With that, how supportive they are of students using AI. The prevalence of the unsure answer was very reflected a lot of the conversations Sultan and I had through our consultation work, just because I think at the state of knowledge the students are currently given surrounding AI tools and the encouragement or almost neutral stance I think that most classroom teachers have taken, I think that unsurety makes them feel, I think that unsurety reflects a lot of the conversations Sultan and I have had and kind of proves that more education is needed to ensure that students feel that either comfortable or uncomfortable and they're able to make that decision of when generative AI has a place in education and when it isn't appropriate, to making sure they have that comfortability. And then the purposes, I think this is a little blurry to see, but the purposes that were predominantly listed were helping summarize information as well as developing ideas. I think that really shows that generative AI can be used for purposes of kind of condensing knowledge and kind of starting perhaps an evaluation and starting students off on the right track. I know personally I've used AI to kind of develop an essay outline and go from there and making my own edits and changes as I see fit. So seeing the student body reflect that was interesting, and we see a lack of response on topics such as writing essays, creating presentations. So it's good to see that students still feel they do that best themselves.
Sure. So moving on to the staff results. So our primary research base was centered around students. So we won't be going into as much detail, with a lot of the patterns remaining the same for staff and parents, but just to highlight some of the interesting statistics that we found. So why have staff not used Gen AI tools for work purposes in the past? Again, the primary reason is I don't know which tools to use, and I don't know how to use them. So that really speaks to the lack of education for staff within our board regarding this topic. And then for which purposes have you used Gen AI for schoolwork? Again, develop ideas, help me summarize information, research-specific topic has been quite consistent with a lot of students' responses. And then how supportive are you of students using Gen AI as a part of their school experience? Very centered around supportive and unsure. However, there are, of course, negative responses as well. But again, keep in mind that I believe these answers are only from teachers who have indicated that they use AI in the past.
Furthermore, we also consulted parents and guardians, and if you want to see more in depth of every single question that was asked, the links are provided. And how supportive are you of students using Gen AI? You can see that parents also strongly agree on that supportive end of things, which is good to hear. And with that, why your child has, if they've chosen not to let their child use AI, a lot of them have stated their lack of support for using AI, or more so their on education. So I think that goes to the importance of seeing kind of the pattern echoed between all of the stakeholders in the HDSB, from staff, students, and parents, and that need for education being prevalent.
For sure. So keeping in mind all of these responses, as well as our consultations over the past year, Sharina and I have compiled a list of recommendations for our board hopefully to follow in future years, even as Sharina and I go off on our post-secondary journey. So starting off with first one, so offer professional development opportunities for staff to learn about AI capabilities, responsible use in the classroom, and strategies for integrating AI literacy into their lessons. So that was really in reference to one of the questions that was asked regarding how much awareness of you have of AI or generative AI tools, and how comfortable are you using with them, with the vast majority of staff, stating that they're not comfortable with using them just yet.
With that, encouraging students to experiment with AI platforms under teacher supervision, of course, with parent consent, of course, to better understand the capabilities and limitations, guiding them in testing AI tools, analyzing outputs, and discussing potential biases or errors. I think all of us can agree when students are told not to do something, it makes them all that more inclined to do it. So I think encouraging that experimentation is really the way to pivot the HDSB students in the right direction.
For sure. Next one is integrate trusted AI platforms into the standard digital toolkit for students in a similar manner as Google Suite is currently encouraged for everyone's use. So this is a more long-term perspective. Unfortunately, I don't think it's quite feasible right now with the security concerns still in place, but I'm sure as our board fixes these issues with Superintendent Shaw is working hard at them, it'll be possible. So the primary reason is we want to again emphasize the importance of AI tools for the workforce, post-secondary exploration, and much more. And AI generally, having its benefits as well. And AI tools are actually, much more advanced than a lot of the current technology that we have available right now. So, for example, there are AI applications that can generate slide decks all for you. There is some that can do, Google Sheets that can do Excel files, etc. So again, these skills are going to be required by the workforce in the future. And for the reasons that we're currently teaching students how to use slide decks or Google Slides, Google Docs, we should also teach generative AI tools.
And then I think this point goes at the forefront of what we hear from students almost every day when we're consulting them about AI, but it's creating opportunities for that student voice to be consulted as per how AI should be integrated within the HDSB. Students have communicated open forums, student staff joint committees, student senate consultations to continue, and so much more, because I think at the forefront our data really outlines the students' feeling of confusion surrounding AIs with respect to its role in education more than anything. Opportunities for students to ask questions directly to staff, for AI to be a safe conversation that it's able to be had in the classrooms, allows for students to understand the boundaries for AI within different classes and discuss with the peers the prevalence of such an up-and-coming technology. I think encouraging that type of conversation will make our students better leaders, and providing students more of those opportunities. We hope to see that gap bridge between staff and students interested in the world of AI, and I think that would allow a lot of the confusion load to dwindle, with some more transparency to be at the forefront.
Moving on to investing and supporting more enrichment programs for the fields of artificial intelligence and machine learning through events like the I Think Challenge, hackathons, SHISM certifications, etc. And that could include collaboration with research groups, educational technology companies, universities, and external stakeholders to find creative professional development opportunities for staff and students to experiment with AI.
And then moving on to more of that education piece that we spoke to with a lot of the research alluding to, educating students on their rights and responsibilities with AI with respect to different evaluations, experiments, in-class assignments, etc., so students can more confidently utilize AI when appropriate. So that clear expectation with assignments and evaluations for what steps AI is appropriate for, what is considered plagiarism, what are the consequences for improper AI etiquette. I think above all, when we introduce those AI conversations into our consultations, we just get questions of what the expectations are, what the consequences are. Students just feel a lot of unsureness, and I think that is reflected by their confusion in their responses. So I think that education on what the students' rights and responsibilities are when it comes to AI, I think we've got there with plagiarism, but I think if AI can be incorporated into a similar light, I think students will feel a lot more confident when going about utilizing AI and steps of various evaluations and assignments.
For sure. Next point is pivot evaluations to test students' 21st century competencies that cannot be answered simply through generative AI applications, but rather involve critical thinking skills that students may utilize AI to brainstorm, but require their own minds to develop robust solutions to real-world problems. So basically what that means is just, AI is available to everyone, and we want to prevent them from, utilizing for most purposes, but how do we do that? We really can't, just because students can still use it at home. They can still, find ways to use it in a negative manner. So we have to control what we can, and that is structuring assignments in a way that encourages them to utilize their own skill sets as opposed to relying on external tools.
And then lastly, accommodating and providing the necessary financial and digital support systems to students who do not have access to the same AI tools. That's something that came up predominantly when we were doing our consultations, with students feeling a sense of inequity when it comes to certain students being more educated on AI and others, and how that translates into evaluation. So I think that accommodation and education piece could really come into handy.
Sure. And then plans for future developments. So these are just basically what we hope is going to happen in future years as Sharina and I leave next year. But we do hope to share the survey findings from the Have Your Say survey to the HDSB student population, whether it be through highlighting some of the information on our social media, through our student senates, etc.
With that, we also want to ensure that the Senate starts holding more of those broader student-wide consultations. Fortunately, we're allowed to consult so many students, but I think the most common thing was students really want an opportunity to work together to really discuss AI as a whole and see what they could create when collaborating in that manner. So allowing more external students to have more of that town hall structured consultation, allowing them to work together, develop solutions that hopefully can be passed on to staff so they can collaborate.
For sure. And we do have within the Student Senate a specific subcommittee surrounding the learning and achievements pillar of the multi-year plan. And we do hope that they will carry on a lot of the advocacy work through the subcommittee, contacting the superintendents, contacting the trustees regarding this matter, and really, carrying on the torch, just because we're not quite confident where the priorities of our next trustees are. Potentially they may be different. So we do want to have a specific, body of students who are going to be passionate about this work. And then we would like to highlight that the previous recommendation that we made for the board to continue providing more opportunities for students to provide input on this manner in any shape, way, or possible.
So yeah, I think that kind of wraps up. We're happy to answer any questions, but thank you so much to almost everyone in the room. I think in some way or form you supported some sort of our AI work throughout the school year, so we really appreciated it. Hopefully you've learned something today, and if anything, when you hear the word AI come up, you hopefully ask for that student voice to be consulted. But yeah, happy to answer any questions, and thank you so much for supporting our AI endeavors this school year.
Thank you so much, Sharina and Sultan, for this great presentation. You certainly outlined a number of wonderful opportunities for AI education and opportunities for AI in education and supporting learning. I love the survey that you did. You had great participation from students, and I see there was also a great many parents and staff that were involved. So I would love to see the full results, the full survey results. I'm very interested in that. And thank you for sharing your recommendations. There's a great deal of thinking that went into that, and things that we can take away and continue to consider and work with. So I will now open the floor to questions. Do we have, I think I heard a beep online. Does somebody have their hand up?
That was me, Donna.
Okay. All right. Over to you, Donna.
This was
Absolutely fascinating. I really, really enjoyed it. My question is, will the slides be shared with us, please?
Yes, of course.
Yes, they will be. Yeah.
Thank you so much, and great job. This was really interesting.
Are there any questions from trustees or staff in the room? Okay, Robbie.
I will echo the sentiments that this is a very well done report. Thank you for the work you've done over the last year in diving into this and for pulling that forward. From the perspective of the people in the inner circle in this table, trustees, what do you see as the important work for us to do either at the policy level or in our own development in being able to contribute to questions around the use of AI and or Gen AI in the HDSB?
That's a great question. I think I'll start off and let Sultan also contribute in there because there's so much that trustees have the ability to do. But I think at the forefront, I think you alluded to this, but engaging in that necessary PD as well as trustees, so you're able to, when you're out in the community, answer questions with confidence as well. And I know that going into next year, I've seen that be a priority. So that will obviously warm Sultan and I's hearts, and we're excited to see trustees become more educated on AI as well. I think furthermore, just advocating further for that student consultation to take place when staff are working on AI, not mystery or more amendments to existing policies and procedures. I think that's how I see the AI strategy unfolding, is amendments to policy and admin procedures pre-existing, similar to plagiarism and things like that. And when that takes place, ensuring the student voice is properly consulted and all the other necessary stakeholders are properly consulted is what I would ask of trustees. Not sure if you have anything else, Sultan?
Yes, I do. Yeah, so just to echo some of Sharina's sentiments, I think, awareness is a very important piece because you can't really advocate for something if you don't know what it is. So, educating you first is a big priority. And then, so encouraging staff to develop comprehensive policies that do keep in mind the student perspective is a very big piece. And then lastly, I think to add on is provincial advocacy as well. I think is a very important consideration because a lot of the current or future AI policy will be standardized by the Ontario Ministry of Education. And as trustees of the school board, you do have the ability to, write correspondence letters, write encouragements for potentially, suggestions that Halton hasn't implemented within our board and how that can be further spread out across the province, just because, Halton is arguably very progressive in that sense. We've been talking with Superintendent Shoss and other superintendents across over the course of the year, and they've all been quite in favor, and their sentiments have been quite well aligning with the voices of students. However, we've also heard from other from other student trustees that their boards potentially are not as open to the possibility of this technology, just potentially providing them with that education that AI can actually be beneficial as their boards as well could be a very positive addition, not only to our board, but of course other boards across Ontario. Yeah.
Thank you very much for those insights. And we have a question from Director Addis.
Thank you so much, Vice Chair Oliver. Not so much a question, just a comment. I just wanted to acknowledge and thank Sharina and Sultan for the work that you did with staff and the collaborative way and nature in which you engaged with us. And so thank you so much for that. We know that this is a very important topic and relevant to students and for our board as well. And so we look forward to implementing much of the things that the recommendations that you have made in the years to come. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Addis. And next up is Shani.
Thank you. So, as a IT people, I work in IT field. I've been working in IT field more than 30 years. So, every time when people talking about the technology and including AI, so that's always amazing. And the people want to introduce this technology in education field. In the MYP town hall, So I heard a lot of parents are also aware of the AI. The AI will change our future. So this is a great trend in the technology. And for today, the students, we need to realize the AI is still in its very early stage. Even now we have using the AI can recognize the images, it can do the like ChatGPT and can talk like the real people, but it's still very early. We need someone to train the system. So I know a lot of people not in the IT field cannot differentiate what is the expert system, what is the AI system. So that's okay. When the students today and they learn more AI and use the AI, they become AI user. Now later they will learn what is the difference, can differentiate these two. In the future, they can use a more advanced AI technology to improve the job efficiency, and also they can be like a core technology developer to advance the technology. So that's amazing. So I always I would like student trustees to bring this and discuss with the students. Also, I have 2 points I heard when you discuss with other students. One is how to apply the technology, what is the consequence. That's two are very important. So this is usually that's the adults they consider that's the competitor, and the AI can be a competitor. Actually, like even 50 years ago, a lot of people already realized artificial intelligence can be a competitor, can be an enemy to the people. But we don't need to worry too much about that because this depends on how people train the system. And so if you don't know the 2 movies 50 years ago, like Westworld, Future World, so you know people at that time we have those movies because people think artificial intelligence a great competitor to a real human. So yes, and now even with AI for all the students, even with AI, this AI is not just we can use as a game or a tool. So we need to consider because we are in the future is the students, so the young people, so they can learn and advance the technology. So it's a huge market. Thank you.
All right, thank you. And seeing no other speakers on the list, I will thank you, Sultan and Trina, for a great presentation and great answers and your insights. Thank you. All right, we'll move on to consent agenda. For approval, we have the minutes of the Committee of the Whole from May 22nd, 2024. And for receipt of information, we have 2 administrative procedures, one of which is brand new, item 3.2.2. I'll put the motion on the floor. Be it resolved that the board approve the consent agenda action items and receive the information items as listed on the June 12th, 2024 Committee of the Whole meeting agenda. Trustee Bryden, would you like to move the motion to deal with the consent agenda?
Yes.
Are there any items that need to be pulled? Hearing none. Are there any objections to approving the consent agenda? Seeing no objections, the consent agenda is approved by unanimous consent. We'll move on to discussion items. And there we've got item 4.1, policies. There are 3, and we'll begin with item 4.1.1, community planning and partnerships. And I will invite General Manager Fred to present. Fred Thibault. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Vice Chair. So I'll go through this quickly. So for the community planning and partnership policy, this is more of just a housekeeping amendment. So we're just updating the forward up front, providing a little bit of additional detail. There's a few things that we'll tweak just in terms of the timing there, what's presented tonight. So we'll keep it as what it was with June. Well, we'll say it's June 2017. There's a little bit of a when the memorandum was officially released and when the announcement was made. So a few comments came in that. So we'll clean that up. But otherwise, the CPPG is really just to update things that have changed since we've implemented it as to how we're holding our meetings and, you know, how we're distributing the list. So they're just changes to make sure that we're in keeping with the policy until we get new guidelines. Happy to take any questions on this one.
Are there any questions to Fred on this policy? Seeing none, we'll move on to item 4.1.2, Program and Accommodation Review. Thank you, Fred.
And again, through you, Madam Vice Chair. Same approach here is these are more housekeeping amendments. So to the previous statement I made, we'll make some cleanup in the preface there. The other changes are just in terms of adjusting the LTAP timelines. In this policy, it was every year, so we're going to switch that to 2 years. And then also in the exception areas, there's two changes that we made. One is just linking it to our school bound review administrative procedure and naming that in the first exception. And then the second one's a deletion. It just doesn't apply. It essentially says anytime we move less than 50% of students, we pass an exemption to say it's not a par, which effectively is every boundary review we've ever done. So I think this is just to say, you know, we don't do this. We go through a boundary review process and we're not doing the exceptions. And we've provided additional updated links to the references and crossings with other APs. Same thing with the CPPG policy we spoke to earlier. So again, just a general cleanup of the policy until such a time we receive new guidelines.
Are there any questions for Fred on the Program and Accommodation Review policy? Okay, Robbie.
This policy hasn't been changed in 6 years, more or less. And we've gone over to separating policies and governance procedures, and there's a whole chunk in there that's effectively governance procedure that's living in this policy right now. Given that it's under moratorium, I don't see any reason to change it now, but it's the intent that we would split that out into a policy and governance procedure format in line with a lot of the others.
Through Vice Chair, you mean in the future when we do get new? Yes, I would say that the policy should be more of the governing document up front than the AP that would be associated to it. I'd go into more of the details here just to try to tighten it up. I think that's.
So there's a third category of document, which is a governance procedure. And there's a question of whether anything in there actually belongs in a governance procedure or whether we can just strip it straight into the AP, and go from there. But that's a revision process that can be revisited when we consequentially revisit and when the moratorium's lifted and we have new guidelines.
Yes.
All right, thank you. Amy.
Thank you. Yes, along the same lines as Robbie, I know that there has been no announcement of when the moratorium will be lifted. It was put in place about 3 weeks after we had our PAR complete. And so that's 7 years that the province hasn't been allowed to close a school. And I know there are many jurisdictions that are looking for the ability to do that at this point in time. Can we put the next review date to be something along the lines of when new legislation is enacted, so that when the moratorium is lifted and the province has decided how they wish to do school closures or merges, that there is a review of our policy at that time? Because it might not be with this group of trustees. It might be in the next board, and we don't want to lose sight of this. This is an incredibly important document, and one that I hope our board never has to do again, but that doesn't mean we won't.
Through Vice Chair, absolutely. So for revision dates, to be clear, we'll say upon the earlier of additional changes or new guidelines in effect, we can certainly add that note in. That's
Thank you very much. I appreciate that.
Thank you. Any other questions on the Program and Accommodation Review policy? Okay, seeing none, thank you very much, Fred. Okay, we'll move on to item 4.1.3, policy template and policy and procedure framework policy update. You have the current and the marked up or updated versions attached, and I'll pass this on to the Governance Document Review Standing Committee.
Thank you. With assistance from Manager Khan, we have taken a look at the policy template and largely kept the approach of what's there, but tried to get a little more explicit about what is in each section in trying to give ourselves a little bit more guidance into setting up a consistent format for how we communicate through policy. So happy to take questions or suggestions on this document.
Are there any questions for Robbie? I have a question. It's just a quick little simple one. Typically we have shown the revision dates up top, including the up for review date at the very top of the document. It is now at the bottom. Just wondering what the rationale for that is. Just thinking that, for anybody scanning and wanting to do some housekeeping in terms of keeping track of things, it may be easier to have it at the top, but if you have a reason, I'd be happy to hear it. Thank you.
So in the revised, in the proposed version, the most recent revision is at the top, and then the rest of the revision history is at the bottom. So you can see quickly, okay, the last time this was touched was X date, but the full details of not only every revision date, but a summary of what was included in those revisions goes into effectively an appendix of the document, the footer of the document, and provides richer detail there without cluttering the top of the document and getting into what's important in the policy.
Thank you, and I do appreciate that. I think that level of detail is great. I'm specifically referencing policy due for review, next review date.
We have added in that revision history whether the review was comprehensive, targeted, or administrative, and that due for review is tied to the comprehensive reviews, so that when we do something less than a comprehensive review, we don't change the revision date.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions on these documents and the templates? Okay, seeing none. Sorry. Go ahead, Carolina.
If I could just make one brief comment. In addition to the policy template, you'll see that the policy and procedure framework policy is being updated slightly just to allow for some of those changes to happen. And so one of those pieces is the definitions. So you'll see that there's a note in the template that says only include definitions that are not contained within the policy and procedure framework. So items like that are being updated in the policy itself so that it's clear what is expected to be in the policy and what is not. And that will come back next week for ratification, the updating of that policy.
Thank you for that extra detail. Shini.
Thank you. I'm just thinking about this because I read a lot of the technical documents, the specifications. So I'm thinking this document, is it possible to add the title of the document and the revision and the page number, the three things in the footer? Thank you.
Sorry, is this in regards to the framework or to the template?
The template. So in the template, if we can add the template, we can put some parameters, three parameters there in the footer. One is the policy name, the other one is the revision and the page number.
I understand. Sorry, we were using the word footer in two different ways. Took me a moment. Manager Cohen?
Through you, Joanna, I think that's a great suggestion and a good improvement on them. Yeah, for sure.
All right. Thank you very much. Any other speakers on this topic? All right, seeing none, we'll move on to item 4.2, takeaways from governance training and next steps. And I'll invite Amy to speak to this.
Hello, everyone. You'll remember that I sent out a survey over a week ago, I think it was 2 weeks ago, regarding the PD that we had with Marion Thompson Howell and changes that she expressed we ought to be making, or at least consider making in the near future. I'm trying to get a handle on which of these changes we're comfortable with going forward with. So I put the survey out to test the waters and see how people responded. I have sent that out via email to all of you so you can see the responses. 7 trustees responded, so we have a majority that responded, but we do have to keep in mind that not all trustees responded. And I would just like us to look at the first question, which basically is, do you agree with removing trustee comments and questions from our agenda? And the majority of trustees who responded said they would like to explore putting some parameters around trustee comments and questions so we can continue having it on our agendas. And I thought that might be the way we would go. And so I wasn't all that surprised with that, because I know that's a big part of the meeting for many of us. And so I am open to suggestions from you as to what parameters would you like to have in place? How can we put parameters in place? Perhaps it is changing the title of the item from trustee comments and questions to something like trustee updates or ward updates or trustee news. I'm just throwing those out there as things that I popped into my own head. And I'd like to hear from others how they feel about that.
All right, we have Carol on the list.
Thank you. My question would be for us to think about how we have been using it and consider if there's a better way of doing that. I don't have a problem with the logic that Marion explained to us, was that she was concerned it could be used by maybe not our board, but a future board to ask questions of staff that they weren't prepared to answer, or to misuse this agenda item. So my question would be, I used it last week at a meeting because we had a delegation. And the way that our delegation GP is written is that the 5 minutes after the delegation is to be used to ask questions of clarification of the delegate. But there is no opportunity, as far as the GP is written, for trustees to have a conversation about what they've heard. So I used that item in the agenda last week to let everyone know that in response to that delegation, I would be bringing a motion to the next meeting. So my question would be, given that that's my most recent use of this agenda section, what would be a better way of going about doing that? Or am I misreading our delegation GP? Could we have had a discussion? I understand we're not asking staff questions that have been raised by the delegation. That's not the point. The delegation is for us as trustees, and then possibly an opportunity for trustees to discuss how we would like to move forward based on what we've heard. So maybe just if you could clarify, given that example that I've provided, how would we do that going forward if we remove this item from our agendas? Thank you.
That's a great question, Carol. I've not heard it expressed that way before, and you're right. You used it to expand the conversation on the delegation. That might be something that we need to consider in the Governance Document Review Standing Committee, if there's a change that needs to be made there, to add the opportunity for debate amongst trustees following a delegation. I will put that in the parking lot because obviously that's something that would have to be decided by the board if that's what they want to do. But I think it's worth noting for sure. Are there any other comments from trustees about using it as a way of giving updates to the board from a trustee perspective? I know that there was very much response saying we want parameters so that we can keep it. So I need to know what those parameters would be. Maybe anyone who responded that way, who wants parameters, could chime in.
Shini?
Thank you. I'm thinking one case of using the questions and comments and questions is because we have the meeting, we have agenda. Those agenda have the reports. And so this is reports and motion and or for information items, that's very formal. But sometimes we have the questions, this is informal, or this is just for information. We are seeking information. That's the purpose. So if we are seeking information, so I think this is like, we don't have informal meeting. So every meeting are formal. So this is a chance to ask those questions. Maybe if we have the question to ask or for specific items, you can say, we just ask before the meeting. This is just so for all the senior teams or the one of the superintendents be aware of the question will be asked, something like that. And but we still need it. This is a question, informal, not for decision, but this is we need a channel to seek those informations. Thank you.
Any other thoughts or recommendations for trustee questions and comments and the parameters that we'd use? If I might chime in, I know that some trustees, and I've done this as well, like to use it to highlight unique achievements or accomplishments or events that happen in their schools. So that has been one use of this. And I sometimes think that, when a report comes up and we have a discussion, often questions come later on as thoughts come to mind and, you're kind of percolating things. And I wonder if that would be a time to ask a question as well relating to something that was already dealt with on the agenda. Not something that required a vote, would change a vote, but if it was a matter for further probing, asking for clarity or something to that effect. So you're not changing the outcome of whatever was decided, but you want to learn more, or you want to shed some more light on something. So I'm just putting it out there for consideration. And perhaps that's what we want to do, is maybe collect from trustees a list of those parameters that we can then help to better define collectively and collectively approve. So is that an approach?
Yeah, I'm thinking here that we might have questions of clarification as an item, and as a separate item, news from trustees. And the questions of clarification, we would perhaps, throwing this out here, the question might be asked at one meeting and answered in the following meeting to give staff the appropriate time to answer. So those questions of clarification would be recorded by Manager Khan, and then the appropriate superintendent or the director would be answering that question in the following meeting. I think that is more than fair. It gives staff the time to do the research and not just answer off the cuff. And I'm looking for nods of heads, agreement, disagreement on that idea. And just please let me know if you're okay with what I'm suggesting.
Any initial thoughts or comments to help move this forward?
I saw Shinyi nod his head.
Carol.
I would agree. I think that's a good idea. It solves the problem that Marion was perceiving we could be setting up by keeping this in our agendas going forward. And it's also a way for trustees to show the public that questions or issues that have been raised to us, that we have brought them to board and they have been brought to the attention of staff. But as you said, Amy does not in any way put staff on the spot to provide an answer in the moment. So I agree. Thank you.
I thank you so much for the feedback on that. I didn't hear anyone say that they couldn't stand the idea, so I'm going to start working on it from that perspective. And we have Donna.
Go ahead, Donna.
Just if I may make a recommendation, if you could just take some notes on this and send it out to us after the meeting because there's a large number. I know you'd be taking notes, but I'm suggesting that it go out to all of us so that we have a clear concept of what we're doing, especially because we are missing a number of members and this is significant. So that just keeps them in the loop so that later there isn't well, I didn't know that.
Okay.
So, thank you.
Yeah, for sure. I'll do that. Thank you, Donna. The next question on the survey was, do you agree with removing administrative procedures from our agendas? And there was a mixture of I fully agree and I agree even though it makes me feel uncomfortable. There was two responses saying they did not agree. So we're kind of all over the place on that, but the majority, 5 of trustees agreed even if it made them uncomfortable, and 2 did not agree. Perhaps we can discuss what it is about removing administrative procedures from the agendas that makes people uncomfortable. Perhaps if we start the topic there, we can go forward.
Donna?
I'm one of the ones that said uncomfortable, simply because I don't need to act on them, but I do need to know about them because I'll get calls about water bottle policies or things like that. So when things are changing, I think it's important for trustees to be aware. I don't know that it needs to be at a board meeting such as this, or if perhaps, every 2 weeks or every month, an email can go out from the director's office. These are the administrative policies that procedures that have been updated and why, just to get the information, because I don't think it's our place to do anything with the information, but I do think it's our place to know what's happening at the board. That's why I put that I'm comfortable with removing them, but I'm not comfortable removing all knowledge of them.
Yeah, thank you very much for that, Donna. Are there any other comments, or would people tend to agree with what Donna has said? Seeing some nods in the room. Anyone else online? Kelly.
Thank you. So I have a concern that if we do not, it's similar to Donna's, if we're not made aware of them when we're speaking to somebody who has a concern, we're not sure where to reference. And also, there are times when the administrative procedures come to the board and we can provide some insight in a different way to what the staff has done and add to it. It's not our place to make the changes, but sometimes that we can make suggestions to what is going on to the administrative procedure for them to consider.
So Kelly, what I heard Donna suggest is a separate email would go out with a list of the APs so that all trustees would be made aware of if there are any new that are being drafted and put out, or if there are changes to existing ones. And I believe that would then provide you with the ability to provide your feedback to the staff person responsible to the superintendent responsible for the admin procedure, who then would take it under advisement, because, as you know, that does not require board approval. There's a baby joining us. So would that? Would that address your concerns?
It would, as long as it's made clear that we can contribute or make suggestions, and not that they would be necessarily have to be taken, but just to provide a different perspective.
Yes, and I can think of a time when trustees actually did contribute a fair bit, and that was around the forms that were being shared at the beginning of the year with parents around all the sign-offs that had to happen. Trustees provided their parental input, right? Because we were all in receipt of those forms, and I think that made some great improvements to where we are at now. Okay, thank you, Kelly, and I see Robbie on the list.
Just going to add in response to the last comment that on the vast majority of APs, there is no reason for staff to proactively consult trustees, but on a couple there might be, and that's in the prerogative of staff. Before revisions come forward, consultation with trustees is entirely possible. And I could imagine a small number of APs where we're having that level of pulse barometer input from trustees might be useful.
So what I'm hearing, the email would be a great way to go, but then DSOs would add those APs for which they would like to get trustee input. They would put them on the agenda under consent items. No. I'm talking about prior to changes being made. So the only thing that I'm totally in agreement with what's been proposed, where changes are made by staff. If this is staff jurisdiction, we are notified by email. They're not on the agenda. What I'm pointing out is that staff have the discretion before making changes to consult trustees. And that's something that they could do if they feel appropriate. Okay.
Thank you for that, and thank you for the suggestion. Certainly, I can work with Manager Khan to make sure that we circulate on a regular sort of frequency to get those input.
Okay, thank you. Sounds like we have a process outlined. Okay, over to you, Amy.
Thanks. So the third question, do you agree with removing the operational plan from our agendas? And there were mostly in favor and 2 not in favor. I did see a comment that even if we aren't having it on the agenda, we need to be able to refer to it. We need to be able to see it. And I think that would be something that could be done quite simply the same way as the sharing of APs. The operational plan could be emailed to trustees so that we can see it and we know what's on it. And if that would help trustees be more comfortable with that, then that would be great. And I see that Kelly's on the speakers list. So go ahead, Kelly.
Thank you. So my concern is the operational plan is how the multi-year plan works. And how are we supposed to know that we're meeting our targets in the multi-year plan if we're not getting the information from the operational plan? So that's my concern, that we need to know what has been achieved through the operational plan. We don't care how it's done. So that piece of it I'm fine with, but it is about the outcomes, because we need to know for the for the multi-year plan that the operational plan is being achieved.
I understand your concern, Kelly, and I remember now that you actually were not able to attend the PD session. And that question was answered by Marion Thompson-Howell during the session. She highly recommends that we get monitoring reports on the multi-year plan itself, so that we're getting updates on meeting the targets that are in the multi-year plan, not the operational plan, because the operational plan, when we're getting updates, we're being given details as to all of the work that's being done, as opposed to the whether or not we're hitting the mark. And the work that's being done, while it is extremely interesting and we find out all kinds of things from that, isn't answering the question that trustees need the answer to, which is, are we compliant with our multi-year plan? Are we moving in the direction that we expect to be moving in? How would you feel about that? And I'm going to let you respond to that before going to Shinyi.
And I believe Dawn also has her hand up, but sorry, you're going to have added commentary, Rin. But I like the fact that we are getting we would get a monitoring report, because that is the piece that we are necessary for us to make sure that we're monitoring the multi-year plan. Apparently Sydney agrees. And okay. And I mean, as you said, it is interest. It is sometimes of interest to see how it's being accomplished, and there are times that is relevant, but it's more important to know the monitoring piece.
Thank you, Kelly. And next on the list, Shani, and then Donna.
Okay. The MYP set the direction, and this is the I think vision, and all the MYP, the key components should be reflected in the operational plan. So if we have the operational plan in the agendas, we can have a look and discuss before the plan is being carried out. So if we only have the monitor report, that means the plan is already for execution. So that's if we do the discussion before that, we can take proactive decisions and actions. Thank you.
Okay. I understand that, Shinyi. I am a little bit concerned, though, that if we are taking a proactive look at the operational plan, that all of a sudden we are meddling in operations, and that is clearly not where trustees should be. And the director has said that he is willing to share the operational plan with us in the same manner as sharing changes to APs. I think if we have the operational plan in our Google Drive and that we're able to see it, that provides us with that information that we are seeking, and that the monitoring reports will give us the information that we actually need in order to determine whether or not we are succeeding in the elements on our multi-year plan. Would that be acceptable for you?
I'm still thinking so all the trustees should know the alignment, to check the alignment between the operational plan and the MYP. So the alignment and the compliance we need to check before that. It's better so everyone agree on the school operation, because this operational plan is just a plan. It does not have all the detailed steps. So we can check this is a direction. Right? This is not we are going to say how you need to do this. This is just a direction. To see the direction is in the right way. So, okay.
Thank you.
Okay, Donna.
Okay, so I think those monitoring reports are going to be key, but at the risk of operationalizing this, I did have a suggestion with this and with the administrative procedures. If they came to us the same way the Q&A document comes to us, so that as trustees, we're able to see it all, and we're also able to see the questions others ask and the answers others ask. So that way we're not duplicating it. We're not, 8 of us are emailing the director to ask about this particular line, or Fred Tebow, what does this mean? So if we get, I think that would make it a little more streamlined, a little more efficient, and less onerous on staff, because we do need to stay informed, but I don't want to add significant amounts of work to staff. So that way we'd still be able to ask questions as we saw them, but it wouldn't be at the board table, and it wouldn't be blindsiding anyone. That was just a suggestion.
Thanks for that, Donna. Do we have nods around the table that would be acceptable, so that trustees feel that they're getting a good look at the operational plan while staying out of the weeds? I'm not seeing anyone shaking their head, and I'm not hearing anyone ding in. So I think we've reached a compromise there.
And Amy, I think as with anything, we'll need to put this into play and, use it for a bit, and then we'll be able to adjust as we learn more on how we're using this and what benefit it has.
Okay. Our next question, I'm going to read the whole question out. Marianne explained that student achievement and well-being should be our primary focus, and that many of the reports we get from staff give a lot of detail about how they are trying to achieve goals. We need monitoring reports to have data with context, not operational activity. This requires changes in how staff approach report writing, and it also requires concrete expectations to be embedded in most of our policies. How comfortable are you with moving in that direction? And again, we had a good number of people comfortable with that. And we had one trustee ask for a better understanding on how moving forward towards monitoring reports. I'm going to ask Manager Khan, because this is something that will greatly change Manager Khan's work. And she's hoping she can get a sense of direction from this on this from us tonight. Not that we're making a decision, but a sense of our direction on this, because a good part of her work then this summer would be making sure that staff understand monitoring reports. So I'm going to throw it over to Manager Khan.
Thank you for that. Yes, indeed. I think as much feedback as I can get from trustees would be really helpful. I have started to have some initial discussions with the Governance Document Review Committee with respect to looking at the report template and how we can leverage reports to provide trustees the information that they need. So creating templates for information reports, creating templates for action reports, and then in light of this discussion, creating a template for monitoring reports. So what a monitoring report would look like, the frequency at which trustees would receive it, and then making those linkages to policies and the MYP goals, as is the expectation of monitoring reports and the purpose for them coming to you. So I am interested in understanding if trustees are generally in favor of going in this direction, because that will further the discussions with the committee and allow for looking at what the format could be, as well as the frequency that is acceptable for trustees.
Did you have a question? Okay, go ahead.
So my answer could be yes and no. So I like the idea. I think the direction is right. I support it. And the only thing is, so our board knows, so since starting last February, in a lot of meetings, I asked for data. So because I'm still not very sure, this is for privacy protection reason, or this is for the technology or some constraints, we cannot have those data. So now currently the data support is not that strong. So without we have those infrastructure, for example, the technology infrastructure, we have the database to gather all the data can be create a concrete the data report with the data support, and so I will suggest that just we don't change the aggressively, so we keep the status quo, but this is the direction we can create. Make all the infrastructure ready, and we see the data ready, so we can, after that, we can remove the procedure. We only use the data and the monitoring reports. So I think that's the future. I think that's the goal.
Thank you.
Next on the list, Robbie.
I strongly support the move to monitoring report focus. And it's easier for me to envision what that looks like tied to pillars of a multi-year plan, where we are jointly setting some high-level outcomes, and hopefully we'll be thinking about the frequency of data available and tying our outcomes into some measurability around that. It's actually, I don't have as much clarity on monitoring of a policy. And I am thinking of, as I sit here, I'm thinking of the safe and accepting schools policy. What indicator might I have dreamt up years ago if I was thinking about how to monitor that? And how would I come back to the table, given that our leadership issued a statement under that policy publicly in the last week? How would I come at it in times of challenge and ask, how are we doing around this? And so in that space, I'm not certain what, I'm not as clear on what that report will look like, and I am looking forward to the suggestions that come forward from staff in the process. And I think Marion said it's going to be a trial and error process. Try something out, see how it works, tweak it, and I think that's an appropriate approach for us over the next year.
Thanks, Robbie. I agree. Any other speakers on this topic? Carol.
I agree with how Robbie has described it. It is kind of a try it out and see how it goes. I have been looking at some of our policies through the lens of how would a monitoring report be structured, and there's quite a bit of variability. One that I've actually asked Manager Khan about just recently was the equity and inclusive education policy. It has a very specific requirement in there for an annual report to the board from the Director of Education on how the board is progressing in meeting the goals. And the goals are very clearly stated throughout the policy as commitments. So I can see a monitoring report for the equity and inclusive education policy to be fairly straightforward to create. But looking at the safe and accepting schools policy, it's written in a different way and doesn't have those specific commitments. And as Robbie said, I'm not sure exactly how that would that report would be structured. So that may be some of the work that you've alluded to that Manager Khan will be doing this summer. But I think we get started on it. It's a fantastic idea. I know one of the concerns that I've been raising since I joined the board was that the operational plan was all that we were given to monitor the effectiveness of our policies, but there was no data. So we were being given lists of PD, for instance, that were targeted at equity and inclusive education, but no outcomes to actually evaluate or monitor as we're required to do under the Education Act. So absolutely love the idea, and I think we just move forward and do the best we can and realize that it's an evolution, and some reports will be easier to create than others. But if we have to go and modify our policies in order to make monitoring easier, I would be open to that as well.
Okay, and so question number 5, I'm going to read in full again. Marion was not in favor of trustees becoming embroiled in operational issues raised by community members. How comfortable are you with Marion's suggestion that we might get updates from staff in place of being CC'd on every email back and forth with a community member? And again, most people were comfortable. A couple of people wanted to have parameters or wanted to at least be able to keep in touch with how things are going. And so there was enough variability on this answer that I'm really quite open to just saying that perhaps what we're looking at here is the idea that after we have handed off an issue to a staff member, the staff member may give us updates upon request, but otherwise we stay out of them. That would be my suggestion based on the majority of the responses. So yeah, I'm looking for ideas.
Okay, we have Donna.
Thank you. I see what you're saying there, Amy, but I struggle with this. I'm going to be honest. When I get an email from one of my constituents that's clearly an operational issue, my response always, I respond back, thanking them, acknowledging the concern, and referring them either to the principal or to Superintendent Barnes, who is my family's school superintendent. But when they send it out originally to me and the principal and the superintendent, and then I watch the conversation happen, I will often respond right at the beginning, thank you for making me aware of your concern. I do appreciate that. It is operational, but I do appreciate being kept in the loop. And then I watch the emails, and I'm very comfortable watching the emails. I don't respond any further after that, but that way if something is coming up in those emails that I'm not quite sure about, I can always go to Dean and say, I noticed this, or I noticed that. And so for me, that's an important part of my job, is that information of what is happening on the ground in my schools. It is not my job to solve it. It's not my job to involve myself in it, but it is my job to be informed of it, I think. That's how I've done it, but for me, it's really, really key to that respectful, trusting relationship with your superintendent, which I am very, very fortunate to have. But my first response is always, thank you for contacting me. I do appreciate it. I know that Superintendent Barnes is CC'd on this, and I leave it in his very capable hands. And then if they continue to CC me in it, I watch it, but I don't answer again. That's my way forward, and that's how I would like to continue myself.
Thank you, Donna, for sharing that with us. And we have first-time speaker Naveed.
Thank you, Joanna. And yes, I do exactly what Donna said. I receive a lot of emails, and I just connect them with Jen. And even if it is about a specific incident that happened, I don't try to get involved. I just refer them to Jen. I trust that it's going to be taken care. And if they loop me into the email conversation, I just keep monitoring. That's it. I never interfere. So that's the way trustees should be. That's my opinion. So thank you.
Thank you, Naveed. And next on the list, Shani.
Okay. For this question, I believe there are two different levels of comments from the community members. So the first is the individual complaint or suggestions. So this kind of phone calls and emails we received a lot. I believe everyone received those. And for those things, usually I just forward to the superintendent, and I always get quick response. And so they accept it, they receive it, and they will handle it. So sometimes I get feedback from superintendent, sometimes not. But some parents also give me the feedback after a couple of months, tell me issue resolved. And so I know that I have no concern about that, because I also believe all the trustees will not go into check step by step. Usually we trust we trust the superintendents, so they can do the work and they can handle that. Also, I help some community members to organize the meetings, book some meetings, so they can directly speak, because I don't know if they have concern about their children. I cannot ask what a problem they have. So that's why I help them to create a connection. Also, I tell the community member what is the problem resolve chain. So this is from the school level and the classroom level, school level, superintendent level. So we have a chart. So these are, I don't think we have issue at this level. The other thing is if we got a lot of emails for specific issues, or some issues already on the news, as a lot of news coverage, or sometimes the ministry or also involved. So at that level, I don't think this is just an individual issue. So we need to do some fact check. I'm not saying everything from the news or from the community members, we must think that's 100% correct. So we can do some fact check, or we can, after that, we should do, because the decision-making process, this is based on the evidence. So we need to do the fact check. So if there's anything related to the policy and the governance procedure, of course we need to make the policy and the governance procedure better. So this is something we need to know. And for the monitoring, we have the duty to do the monitoring and the governance. So this is always a debate. What is the governance? What is the management? So we are not, all the trustees not at the manager work. So we are not doing the management. So for the governance, for the evidence-based decision making, what is the evidence? Actually, the evidence is based on something happening in the school, not happening in this room. Right? And that's why if there's anything from on the media and on the already have the ministry involved, so we need to know more details about that. We will not go into the detail to tell the senior team how to do it, but we should know what happened. Thanks.
Thanks on that, Shinyi. And I don't see any other speakers, so there's Carol.
Sorry, I was a little bit slow there. Thank you. I have some difficulty with the question without some specifics. What exactly embroiled in an operational issue means. I would echo other trustees who have talked about what I would say in my experience is the vast majority of inquiries from community, which I sort of characterize as navigational. So parents, community members who have a question and they're trying to navigate the board and who to speak to. And in most cases, pretty much all of them, I would say once they're connected with the appropriate superintendent, we don't hear back unless it's praise. And I've received one of those recently about Superintendent Ruddock, and it was follow-up from the parent to say how grateful they were that I helped them to find the correct person and that their problem was solved, and they were very happy. There's the other issues that I think Shinyi has alluded to as well, where we are being included continuously and in an ongoing way because there is concern that our policies are not being upheld. And that is actually our job as trustees. We are there to ensure accountability and stewardship of the financial resources for public education, and we are expected to support confidence in public education. So when you're using the language of trustees becoming embroiled, is that indicating a concern that trustees are attempting to insert themselves into operational concerns where they shouldn't be? Or is it the situation in which community members and parents are continuously reaching back out to trustees because they're not seeing a resolution? In that case, it's a monitoring function. If that's an ongoing issue, it's unresolved, perhaps we as trustees need to be looking at our policies, whether or not there's an effectiveness issue there, or should we be monitoring accountability to uphold those policies? So again, I think I'm not quite understanding the question. If there's some specific examples that perhaps could be used of specific issues where it's perceived that trustees are embroiled, then maybe that would help to inform the conversation in a more helpful way.
I might be able to help with that. Sometimes a trustee is approached by a parent, the parent has concerns about what's happening in the classroom and writes a lot of very personal private information in an email. The trustee responds to the parent and asks, is it all right if I share this with the superintendent, because I can't help you with this problem on my own, it's not my job. And then all of a sudden you've been privy to a lot of really private personal information about a student that a parent has unwittingly shared, and you're asking to share it with yet another person. And sometimes the parent doesn't want to let go. They want to keep the circle small, and so they actually want the trustee to solve the problem. And yes, we have our pathways, and we can explain to parents that that's not how it works, but that's one way in which a trustee can become embroiled in an operational issue that we ought not to even know the details of at that granular level. And so there's an example for you. Another example would be a parent who has established a relationship with a trustee, coming to that trustee for small things that are happening at the school, expecting the trustee to intervene. So there's a couple of examples.
Go ahead, Carol.
So that's helpful. Thank you. I've actually had that circumstance myself, and what I found was extremely helpful was reaching out to the superintendent at the time and getting some guidance from them. I found that was really useful in terms of getting some language and working together, because it's in the situation you're describing, it's really a parent who has failed to understand the distinct roles and what a trustee can do in the school. So I thank you for that example. I do understand better what you're talking about. I also found at the time that the chair at the time was extremely helpful in making suggestions and talking about how to explain the role better, so that the parent would feel supported, because I think that's what we're all trying to do, but also truly understand what the pathways were. And so I felt in that circumstance that the combination of the chair of the board and the superintendent was extremely helpful. So I would encourage any trustee who's found themselves in that situation to reach out to senior staff. So whether it's the superintendent for that school, or someone else in senior staff, or even the director himself, if that's okay, and just be really open about what's happening and the struggle that the trustee's been put into.
Thanks for that, Carol. Now, I have one final thing that wasn't on the survey, but it's been something that has been a source of contention, and I don't know if all trustees get the emails that I do, but in the last, I'm going to say 3 years, we started doing the History and Heritage Months that were defined by the Ontario provincial government at the beginning of each board meeting. And I hear from a number of communities who are telling me, well, you missed mine, and why wasn't mine included? And I respond back that we follow the History and Heritage Months as laid out by the Ontario government. But the Ontario government doesn't recognize all of the ones throughout the world. And I know that we have enjoyed hearing about what's happening in these Heritage Weeks. So I'm coming to you to ask whether you think that we ought to continue having these Heritage Months at our monthly board meetings, or whether or not you think that perhaps by doing that we're overlooking some communities, and perhaps that is actually is perceived as harm. So if you're not ready to discuss that tonight, I realize I just added it to the list, it just occurred to me today that this might be a place to have that conversation. And so if you're amenable to having it, I'd love to hear from you.
Okay, and we have a speakers list. We'll start with Robbie.
My initial reaction is I would be open to removing those, both from the perspective of it can never be comprehensive. We have a list, and in some ways, having that list cycle every year becomes less impactful as we say it more times. And so the fact that we've had equity and inclusion as a pillar over the last 4 years, and we've been doing this for the last 3 or 4 years, as the chair indicated, actually kind of ties in nicely, and it might be time to sunset it. It's my thought.
Thank you. Donna?
I agree with Robbie. I think he said it very well. I will admit I have a discomfort in answering this question because I do come at it as a white colonial. I would be very interested perhaps in sending it to our Human Rights Equity Advisory Committee for advice, or, having Pardeep chime in on it or things like that. I think there might be people. I recognize it's on our agenda, so it's our decision. We added it, but I would want to hear from people that I think are better qualified to know the ins and outs and all the parameters of this. But other than that, I think Robbie did say it well. That's my first instinct, but I want to make sure that my first instinct is still the right instinct, because I do come from that white colonial perspective.
Thank you. Are there any other speakers to this? I think it's a good move to reach out to the equity department. And so yes, Naveed.
Yeah, so I fully agree with Robbie, because it saves us from these situations. That's what I think. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Naveed. So yeah, I will reach out to Pardeep and Jenny and get some thoughts on how what we're doing, whether or not they feel that it's been equitable and fair, I guess. So that's all that I had for tonight. I do thank you so much for your input. That was really valuable. I've taken 4 pages of notes, and I will compile them all and send them out. And we're on the road to next steps, which I love. Thanks so much.
All right, thank you, Amy. And we'll move on to agenda item 5.0, and that is committee updates. Standing committees. Let's begin with governance document review. Robbie, please.
Thank you. As mentioned earlier in the meeting, we've been working with Manager Khan on report templates, and are excited to see how that develops given the shift in direction that we've discussed tonight. The governance procedure on school naming and renaming will come to board in the fall, and the proposed revisions to the governance procedure on the director's performance appraisal will also be coming as well, with many thanks to that committee for their work drafting that.
Any questions or comments for the governance document review committee? Okay, seeing none, we'll move on to trustees' professional development with Carol, please.
Thank you. Just a quick reminder to trustees, if there are any issues or questions related to human rights law or human rights issues, to please add those to the spreadsheet that Carolina helpfully created for us. The intention is to provide those questions and issues to the presenter at the end of this month, so that he will have them to personalize our PD session that is planned for September. So please get your questions and issues into there, and we'll look forward to the session in September. Thank you.
Thank you, Carol. Are there any points of clarification for Carol? Seeing none, we'll move on to board committees. Are there any updates? None at this time. Let's go to trustee questions and comments. Shini.
I have a suggestion. So I'd like to have a discussion between the trustees and the Human Rights Department about the new version of the land acknowledgement. So we need to learn what does it mean. So yeah, because I have a lot of questions about this, and so if we. Because we make the decision, board make the decision. This is not from the indigenous partner, so we need to know why we changing this way, and each paragraph we need to know what does it mean. That's it.
All right. So we did have a presentation from the indigenous team, shall I call them? And there were PD sessions offered to trustees as well as staff on the new land acknowledgement. What I'm hearing is that you and perhaps some others have some additional questions and would like to explore those.
That's right, because our indigenous partners can give us the knowledge about from the indigenous people's perspective, and but the decision, the final version, is from our board. This is not from external entity. So that's why we need to understand why we need to make this change. And I remember before there's a presentation. I forgot who had this presentation. Said that the old version has several issues. I also need to learn what is the issue is, if we can have those conversations or learning.
Certainly we can explore that, but I think that at this point that will be in the fall.
Sure. Yeah, because this is very close to the end of the school year. So in the fall, then that should be okay.
Okay, thank you. So it sounds like perhaps we can pull together some questions from trustees and look at a PD session in the fall to help answer and clarify. Thank you. I don't see any other hands up for this topic, so no further questions or comments. All right, we have exhausted our agenda. It is 7:50, and I call this meeting adjourned. Thank you very much, everybody. Good evening.